Welcome to the Sonic Days podcast, home of all things audio. This season was recorded live at Sonic Days 2024. In this episode, we're taking a global look at diversity in the audio industry. What are the barriers still standing, and how can we break them down to create a more inclusive future? This panel brings together voices from across the industry to share insights, challenges, and practical strategies for building a more representative audio community worldwide. Joining us are John Krivit, Dr. Leslie Gaston-Bird, Marcela Rada, and Marion Leonard.
Well, let's get going.
We can have a conversation.
We're having a nice conversation. So my name is John Krivit. I'm a past president of the Audio Engineering Society. You have my old job.
I have your old job.
And I'm also a professor at Emerson College in Boston, Massachusetts. And I have a Facebook group called Hey Audio Student with 130,000 members. And, you know, it's interesting. It's a very interesting time in the United States right now. Diversity is a very challenging thing. Sometimes on social media, I will post different events and different ideas about diversity, and it's met sometimes with great enthusiasm and sometimes with great hostility. So I think it's kind of interesting to have this discussion. I think we've had a little bit of a discussion even leading up to this about what it is we wanted to talk about or didn't want to talk about or any of that. So I'm pleased to be joined by these wonderful people here. Maybe you guys can introduce yourselves.
My name is Leslie Gaston-Bird. I'm president of the Audio Engineering Society. I live in Brighton, England, but I was born in Dayton, Ohio, and I taught at the University of Colorado for several years. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Marcela Rada. I am an audio engineer and a doctoral researcher at the University of Surrey, so I am based in London.
Hi, I'm Dr. Marion Leonard. I am a reader at the University of Liverpool in the Department of Music, and I have published a book on gender in the music industry, which is some of the things I think we'll be talking on.
Mm-hmm. So why don't we start this off? Marion, maybe you can talk about 3 positive things you're seeing in your work.
Okay, I think I'm going to be cautious here and say they're positive and maybe they have an undertow.
Okay.
So I think in terms of gender research, one of the challenges that I've found is getting enough data to make a informed picture. And I think that's one of the positives that we're seeing now is there is a lot more reports coming out. There's just sort of transparency and accountability as well. So within the UK, for example, anyone who employs anyone over 250 people, they have to publish the gender pay gap. And so that's really useful information if we look at Warner's, if we look at Universal. And I think that sort of brings maybe my undertow that there is still these issues, but it can also perhaps be something we can talk about is, you know, it brings that accountability. So that'd be my first one. My second one is that there's lots of pressure groups now. There's lots of different people self-organising that are bringing a vocality to these issues. And I think just the fact that we've got this track running through this industry conference demonstrates that this is now something that people are much more willing to talk about and try and engage and address issues. And the other one is a bit of a plug for Grace Goodwin, who I'm working with, who's doing her PhD at Liverpool. And she's put together Genie, which is a website, Gender Equality Networks in Europe. So that's our Genie. And so she's pulled together 400 different across 27 different countries of different women organising in different ways, whether they might be in production, whether they might be about mentoring, they might be about linking people up. So just getting that network together is really, quite empowering, but also pulling it so that people can see that they're not working in isolation from one another as well. So that's my 3.
So let me follow up on that. What is the impact of having the data be public? Is it manifesting itself in positive ways? Are the companies taking notice? Are problems being addressed?
Okay, so I think definitely if you start to publish that data, people start to ask questions why that data is sitting where it is. Mm-hmm. So hang on, I did make a note. I did make a note. So Universal Music has got a gender average pay gap of just over 25%. And Warner Music has got an average pay gap of 39.4%. So we're looking at substantial difference. But then as a result of them being required to publish that, if we're thinking about brand, we're thinking that that's, something that people might want to think about their, how will they change this? So they're also publishing actions for that. So Universal have put in some training, some sponsorship, and also thinking about when people leave, doing more exit interviews and finding out why are people leaving and why, and actually producing that as data as well, because that's really useful for future retention. Mm-hmm. So I think it's sort of thinking about how there might be different actions. Warners have put in some more flexible family policies as ways to address it. So it's not a quick fix, but we're seeing some levels of change.
And the pay gap that exists, is this for people doing the same jobs, or is it because maybe certain genders are not getting access to some of the better paying jobs? How would you explain that?
So we're certainly seeing it within the UK at the top end of that pay scale.
Yeah.
So I think, again, we're seeing that's a bit of a problem. So we might be losing people at that top end. They might be exiting out of the business.
Yeah.
There's also some, people coming in and doing unpaid internships and things like that. That's a higher rate for women. So there are different levels.
Yeah.
We're seeing different sets of issues, really.
Interesting. Marcela, you have you're a kind of a product of a lot of different cultures. You're from Colombia. You grew up in Canada. You're living in England. You've seen this kind of thing in how is it different in these different places that you've lived?
I've also lived in the U.S. and in Spain.
Okay, so sorry about that.
And I've worked in Saudi Arabia, and I've taught in other countries for sure, in the Netherlands. It's hard for me to link it to specific culture.
Okay.
Because when I go to a place, I like to learn about the culture, and I can't say that I've faced a specific issue because of a cultural difference. So I wouldn't be able to speak to that. I think as a society and as human beings and history, there's stereotypes, and those stereotypes have carried all over the world. Mm-hmm. Having a specific view of somebody just because of their gender, I think happens everywhere. Mm-hmm. And so that's one thing that I have noticed, let's call it like worldwide, that people carry stereotypes with them and in their relationships with other people. And when they meet somebody, perhaps not even consciously, they already have this idea of who they are. Yeah. So, for example, just being condescending because, you're a woman, you might not know, or, those kinds of things, I think, happen everywhere.
Yeah.
I don't think perhaps it's not cultural, but it's societies and as human beings, and considering everything that has happened throughout history and how women have had to really fight for lots of different things. and how it's still very much a huge
Yeah.
problem.
I wanted to ask you that, Leslie. You and I were having a discussion yesterday. I know that you grew up in Dayton, Ohio, have lived in different places in the United States and worked in there, and now you live in England.
And now I live in England. Yeah, so it's been, what I call it is code breaking, right? I think every culture has their own unique code. And so growing up in the States, somehow I got taught that go after what you want, chase that pot of gold, be, firm handshakes, tell people what you're capable of. And so that's how I learned how to do stuff. I'd say, hi, I'm Leslie. I'm awesome. I'm a great sound engineer, and I know all this stuff. And, I'm ready to work for your company. And I think that's what got me through the door in a lot of places. Then I moved to England, and I say, hey, I'm Leslie. I'm the shit. I'm an amazing audio engineer. And people say, oh, are you though? It's sort of like, it's like, what happened to the code? It's like there's a glitch in the matrix. Like, this doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work over here. So I think the thing for me was getting used to, well, how do you, in England, and you're a British woman, how do you sell yourself? Like, I have no idea. And then, being on panels and, we're talking about glass ceilings and so forth from a British perspective. I still haven't cracked the code, by the way. And I don't know how to do it. But that doesn't mean there isn't advocacy in England. There is, there's definitely this work being done in England with the same conversation happening, but just from a different angle. And maybe, Marion, you can tell me how does the British code differ from the American code, would you think, based maybe on what I said?
I think that's true about, I'm going to go into cliche now, summarize a whole nation state, But I think there is a little apprehension about presenting as overconfident and that not coming off right. And I think then as a result of that, maybe, again, going back to the stats, women don't get those bonuses. There's a gap there. And maybe about being confident to put oneself forward for that promotion or for the next step might also be to do with this sort of slight reticence. Have I got there yet? Which I think is, another sort of layer of issues.
Yeah, the imposter syndrome that people talk about. In the panel before ours was focused on Denmark. And they were saying that there was a live sound company that was looking for applicants, and they only had male applicants, so they didn't know how to recruit women. And that seems to go hand in hand with this statistic that says women are less likely to apply for a job if they don't think they meet 100% of the criteria, whereas men tend to apply. If they meet 80%, they know they can get the other 20% on the job training or something. So, yeah, that's a very interesting thing to bring up about imposter syndrome and about, can I do this? For me, as an American in England, I feel very much like a unicorn, a fish out of water, if you will.
Hmm.
Yeah.
The AES is doing a conference on diversity, equity, and inclusion. You and I spoke about this yesterday, and half the people are super enthusiastic, and then there's a strain of people like, that's a horrible idea. Well, why would you do that? Someone asked me, a good friend who I love and respect, said, would you take down the negative comments about it? And just because I was tired and busy, I did. But what I really would have much rather had that friend expressed why there is this event. What is the goal of events like this, and what does it hope to achieve, and what does it hope to address, and how might it better the situation? So
let's see, where should I start? So yeah, AES is having their first DEI conference in San Diego in April next year. If you are a scholar in that area, I encourage you to respond to the call for papers. And we've wanted to do it for a long time because there are many scholars in the field, Marion, Marcela, myself, who are doing this kind of work. Stacy Smith, unfortunately, was ill and not able to join us today, but she's a powerhouse of data. She did the Annenberg inclusion study. They've tracked popular music releases since 2019 and found that, there's a dearth of representation in the music industry. And so I think what we want to do is have a place, and this is important because in academia, it's publish or perish. So you need to be able to present the work that you're doing at a scholarly convention or submit it to a journal. And so this is one opportunity for people who have been doing this work. I will name them: Kat Young, Amandine Pra, yourself, Marion, myself, Marcela, there's Eddie Dobson, and Mary Mazurek, and there are PhD candidates in the pipeline who want to study the involvement of women or underrepresented groups in music and audio engineering. And so this gives them a place to present their results and to get recognized. But it also goes back to your earlier point about it's very data-driven. I'm going to say another thing that has to do with data and the importance of data. So I was talking to Terry Winston, who runs Women's Audio Mission in San Francisco. And I say, don't you think data will help you make the case for WHAM and running WHAM? And she's like, we've never done anything based on that kind of data. Because you can go to an AES conference, and this conversation we had about 5 or 6 years ago, so things are getting better. But she says, you can go to any AES conference and just take a bird's eye view of the floor. It's 5% women. I don't need data to show me that or to tell me that. And so that's why Women's Audio Mission exists, is to serve these underrepresented groups. Can I keep talking?
Yeah,
I'm just going to keep talking.
Please.
So we're having the DEI conference, and one of the things that I'm interested in sharing is this notion of affinity group. I'll name a few: Women's Audio Mission, Sound Girls, We Make Noise, Audio Girl Africa, Switch, which is the Society for Women in Technology. Keep going, Leslie, because there are so many more. Girls Make Beats, Beats by Girls, Tit Wrench, Female Frequency. There's so in every country there's a Yorkshire Sound Women's Network. There's 70. I can't memorize 70 of them. But they are safe spaces for women to come. The Black Sound Society, so Black Sound Engineers, Black Sound Wave, the Creator Suite, the Digilog. And these are places where people can come and let down their shoulders. And one of the main comments I hear in these groups is, I'm so glad to be here. I can relax. I don't have the weight of looking stupid on my shoulders. I can ask questions and I can be taken seriously. And that is why we need spaces for women to be able, and minoritized people, to be able to get together and talk about their shared experiences, know that they're not alone, and to finally get some answers. I'm going to keep just one more thing, and then, because I know there's 4 of us up here. But what I found in my research, called Immersive But Not Inclusive, is that we have women who are super smart. I mean, I did a study with 24 people. They have master's degrees. They're working on their doctorates. They say things like, I feel like I have to have a doctorate before anybody takes me seriously. And they have this special superpower. They're like, just show me what you're doing. I will matrix this stuff in. You can tell what my favorite movie is. I will download this stuff to my head, and then I will teach it to other people that I know don't have access to it. They're super smart. I interviewed men and women for my study, by the way. And so it seems to be, what I found is there's a disconnect between what the gatekeepers think is needed and what the women and men in these groups are saying they want. And the disconnect seems to be the gatekeepers who think, I can't find anybody. Maybe we need to start some programs for 4th graders to get people interested. And on the other side, what the people in these groups and studies are saying, I'm here. You keep looking over me. You know, there's this thing going on, like if we could only find somebody, and they're there. So it's almost like we need to bring the gatekeepers together with the affinity groups and say, where is this disconnect? You know, what is the special mentoring that you need that will help enable access?
So where do we find this group of people? Are there resources to help us, find, qualified candidates of different genders or sexual orientations?
Sorry, I really don't want to hog the mic here, so I'll answer that, and then I really want everybody else to get a chance to speak. But so there was Sound Girl started the Equal directory, so it was, I think, funded by Spotify, so it's called EQL, and I think the short name for it is Equal, and so. Many in the Sound Girls community were putting their resumes and their information on this directory. And on the front page of the directory, I think Carrie Kai says, "We want to eliminate the phrase, 'we can't find anybody.'" Mm-hmm. So here's a directory. So that's one of them. And so there's other directories that exist. AES also, if you send an email to our Diversity and Inclusion Committee run by Mary Mazurek and Cecilia Wu, they will bring things to the committee to say, hey, we need someone to talk on this panel. Do we have somebody with expertise in acoustics, machine learning, VR for games, automotive audio? Yeah. And so that's a resource. Yeah.
Well, so let me ask another question. What can the companies do? The manufacturers, is there a role that they can play in further democratizing our field? Marion, I'm thinking maybe you have an idea about that.
I'm not sure about companies. I'm going to pick up on something that, which is about you said that there's lots of people putting their resumes out there, but it also speaks, I think, to sociality and to what social groups people are participating in or not participating in. In research that I've conducted, which hasn't just been about sort of audio or tech, it's also been about other things like music management or other things which are highly male-dominated fields. People have always come up with the word the boys' club. This has repeatedly come through, that people feel that they don't have a place at the table or that they sort of edged out for different reasons, and it might be that they don't participate in football where conversations go on, or they're not in that nighttime economy network, so they miss out on some important, there's a job coming up, I can plug you in, So I think it's also a little bit about the industry is very informal. And it's a lot of jobs don't get advertised, do they? It's word of mouth, it's recommendation. Yeah. And so those areas which again need to be sort of thought through, because it's how do you get your name mentioned and not someone else that someone's already worked with, is familiar and trusts. Yeah. So I think there's quite a lot to unpick there as well.
Mm-hmm. It just came to me that I've had the opportunity to attend a lot of events with the Audio Engineering Society. And when I would go to events in the United States, like Leslie said, it'd be a small smattering of women. And when I would go to events in Eastern Europe, audio engineering was, in places like Poland, were much more equitable. And that, the perception was, it was almost like in a symphony orchestra, it wouldn't be unusual to have half men and half women in that kind of environment. But in a place like Poland or Serbia, I was finding that it was not split. I'm also going to say that in the courses that I teach in Boston, I now have more women in my classes. I used to have about 5 or 10% female, and now I actually have more female in my classes for sound. I don't know whether it's because of the work that's being done, the perception of sound. I don't know. So I guess I'm curious, are you finding data from countries? No?
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak a little bit to that. So it is interesting to see. Poland seems to have more women than men in sound. I really wanted to write about this. I haven't written about that yet. There's some people we can talk to who can speak to it, but the Frederick Chopin Conservatory is where there's a lot of really talented women working. Another country that I was looking at is Japan. And so we were talking about unpaid internships and stuff. It seems that after the pandemic, live sound became a lower paying job. Somehow they found themselves with more women working in live sound than men in Japan. So that was just a very interesting development as well. What makes it work, that I think at University of Surrey, where Marcela and I are both connected, my supervisor also said to me, I guess something's happening because I'm starting to see more women in the field. And I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of women working their asses off to make this accessible. So I think it is that the work that we're doing and our colleagues are doing, to get people interested, I think that it is paying off because we're seeing things get better.
Yeah. The people who seem to be really opposed to this whole topic are very vociferous in their objection. How do we speak to this? They feel like we're creating this, you're just answering discrimination with more discrimination. What's the best way to speak to this criticism? Or is it to not address it at all? What do you think?
All right, I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back to the data, because I think that's a very flat and straightforward way. It's not about interpretation. Yeah. It's straightforward, isn't it? We can say, well, what are the issues? Well, let's look. Is it about employability? Is it about people exiting because of caring responsibilities? I mean, some of these are societal issues around gender, and some of these are more specific to the industry. So I think we can't deny the need to address inequality.
Mm-hmm. I would say that I think those kind of comments come from a place of ignorance, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but not knowing why or not understanding why that's important is not really knowing at all what is happening.
Yeah.
For example, in research, I always make a point to, when I speak about my research or research that I've read, I always make a point to tell people the fact that this research was done with a participant pool that was not diverse was a problem here, I'm not even, it's just a fact.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about feelings being hurt.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the fact that that is a problem,
mm-hmm.
and that if that is not something that is standardized and that we have guidelines for that just worldwide for research, that will continue to be a problem. And so not knowing that and not understanding that a conference like this could inform people of how they could conduct research, taking into account certain guidelines. What if during this conference we come up with guidelines that then become applied everywhere, That's the importance of having this kind of conversations and having people attend this kind of events. So not understanding that concept just comes from a place of ignorance. And this is why education is so important. And this is why a conference where people could come and be educated is important. So simply being curious and accepting that there are things that you don't know.
Yeah.
Already just makes you a better human being in general. So that's what I would say to those people who at this point have a hard time understanding why something like this is important.
Sure, I'll say just one thing. I've seen those inflammatory posts, and sometimes I flag them to you. And what I've done on a couple of occasions is, I know I'm representing the AES, but once or twice, I'm just like, okay. Put my foot down, and I might say something that I regret. But at least in one case, I remember doing a bibliography in the comment section. And I had footnotes and citations for every myth that I was dispelling in this post. And that felt empowering. And I just felt like saying, look, just copy and paste that anytime you see somebody talking about. There's the leaky pipeline, which is that they did a study in England. This was Georgina Bourne, which was the music technology in class in the UK. At age 8, They surveyed students to see how many wanted to study music technology. Half were girls and half were boys. By age 16, that number had gone down to whatever percent. By age 18, it had gone down to 10%. And at A levels, it was down even further. So it's a drip, drip, drip out of the pipeline. What happened to the 8-year-old who was interested in music production? That's to dispel the myth, well, girls don't want to do this. Well, they used to. So what happened? There's a leaky pipeline when you get in to education. So I was wearing my cap and gown, standing in line at the University of Surrey commencement, and I met a young woman. I said, hey, what are you graduating in? Oh, she's graduating in sociology. She was in music tech, but those guys. I'm like, are you kidding me? You dropped out of music tech? She's like, I couldn't take it. I know, I made the same face like, So microaggressions are a thing. Mm-hmm. They drive people out. There was a study, in the panel before us, which was focused on Denmark. There was a young woman who spoke up at the end who said, let's stop scaring young women from this profession. We keep saying it's going to be terrible. There's microaggressions and it's going to be scary and horrible. And then women say, I don't want to do this. Well, let's rewind the tape a little bit to when we were 13, 10, 8. They did a study, and they went to a class that was doing some STEM work. And they had two groups, boys and girls in Group A, boys and girls in Group B. For boys and girls in Group A, they said STEM is male-dominated. There aren't very women in STEM subjects. And then they did a little science experiment. After the experiment, they said, are you interested in pursuing a STEM field? More boys than girls said yes. They went to other group, and they said, here's a fun science experiment. Let's go. What did you think? How many of you want to do STEM when you grow up? And it was an equal number of boys and girls. Wow. So that's real. Telling somebody girls don't really do this goes in there. That's messed up. Of course, you could be a rebel girl. When I wanted to play snare drum in high school, my dad said, you don't want to play snare drum. You can never stop playing. Like the flute players, they can take a break, when you're marching in the parade, but snare drummers have to play the same time. I was, bap, 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 let's go. Da, 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 da. I was like, we're marching and we're playing.
Nice.
Dad, what the heck? Okay, anyway, so stereotypes are a thing.
So it's interesting. In Mexico City, there's an event called Soundcheck Expo. It's a great event. One of the things, Michael Romanowski comes with me every year. And what they do is they take all the mucky mucks and they march them up and down the aisle of the trade show with a big mariachi band.
Yeah, I love it.
So from there, it's a perfect event. The AES at this event would always have this packed room with hundreds of people, and it was just fabulous and lots of people. And all of a sudden, the AES has very few people in the room, and next door, there's a Sound Girls room.
Mexico.
And there's a woman named Carolina Anton, who is my hero. She has single-handedly ruined the AES in Mexico City. She has live music, and she has sponsors and comfortable seats, and the whole thing is just, there's a sound crew of 50 women who are just so excited to be working this room and putting on this great event, and they have all kinds of amazing things. And I think there's definitely that culture of support and reinforcement, and you see someone who is like you, who's enthusiastic about doing this kind of work, and it couldn't be better. Michael.
I was just gonna add to that. She's a powerhouse. She's awesome, and she really has done a great job with that. One of the things I think she also is amazing with is she brings manufacturers in and shows that they're supportive of this. So I think the messaging that you're talking about, one of the things is the subliminal saying we're all in and we're all in support of this. But she also makes it really fun. It's not like a thing like you got to do this and it's got to be that. It's like, let's get in and let's have a good time, and this is awesome. And so I think part of her power is to disarm to be able to just say, let's get in, let's have some fun, and let's do this. And we're not necessarily, we just are, and we're just let's embrace this. And she brings in community to support her.
Yes, and creates community. And it would seem to me that bringing in the manufacturers into this conversation, there's a financial motivation. You can double your sales if you're not just focusing on one gender. So it feels like that would be extremely worthwhile.
Can I just say we need manufacturers to have Mother's Day sales and not just Father's Day sales. They keep doing this. Guitar Center, Father's Day sales, gifts for him. Hey, we need a Mother's Day sale too.
Yeah, all right.
I'm going to talk about some proud moments.
So talk about some proud moments in this battle.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about some of the proud moments that we've had in DEI, in the work that we do. And so some of my proud moments come on Zoom calls when I have people in the session say things to me like, I've never had a group like this before that I've worked with. It's so supportive, And on the call, you're looking at 4 Black women doing Dolby Atmos. One's in Nigeria, one's in D.C. I'm teaching the class, one's in Brooklyn. And we're just looking at each other like, damn, this has never happened before. Let's talk about objects. Let's talk about the renderer. Let's talk about when you need a time code option card on your Maddie. I mean, it was just really cool, really cool. So that was a proud moment. Another proud moment was when I went to Howard University. And Howard University is a historically Black college in the United States in Washington, D.C. And I had told, I let my husband and my kids know that I was traveling to D.C. And it was a very stressful moment because I had some other stuff going on, and I kissed my babies goodbye. They're not babies, they're teenagers. And, I flew across the ocean to do this class, and I met Carolyn Malachi, who's in the Recording Academy with me. And she was, we got Dolby Atmos set up in her class, and the students were there, and, I got ready for the first day slides, and I just had this moment of, this feels really good. This feels really good. I feel like I'm able to bring being a role model here, and they're very sharp kids. I mean, young people, just ready to go. So I felt very proud about that.
Mm-hmm. Marcela?
I think one thing that I am proud of is that I've never let anybody change my mind about what my goals are. I'm very clear about what I want to do, and I always take rejection as redirection and protection. Yes, I've faced rejection like all of us, and a lot of it, but a lot of people have said yes to me as well. And that's my focus, So just having that kind of mentality, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud to say that up until this point, I've done everything that I've been wanting to do up until this point in my life. So since I was 12 years old, I knew I was going to be an audio engineer. I knew I was going to do my PhD. I knew I was going to teach. And so I've done all of that. And when it comes to educating people, at my very young age, I have taught hundreds of people all over the world, and I have been able to inspire men and women and everybody. And I take a lot of pride in that because I have a lot of people message me on social media, people that perhaps I've never even met, that I haven't even taught. And they message me and they tell me that they're inspired by something I said or by something I've done. They now want to do their master's or their PhD, or they went and did this. I think by being active and showing what I'm doing or what I'm passionate about, I'm able to at least, inspire some people. And I am very proud of that.
Yeah. Well, you're a great inspiration. That's why when I see you doing something, I always love to feature it on Hey Audios too.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So Marion?
I think also, that working with students and seeing them come through and seeing the gains that we've made over time, I think is really, it's terrific, you know. And I'm what you were saying as well about having that safe space, I think that's really important as well, that, you know, that these spaces are opening up and that people feel comfortable to fail, as well as to you know, that failure is just, as you said, a step towards a different goal maybe, or readjusting your goals. So yeah. And then today I got a message from one of my PhD students, and she's just got through today. So there we are. That's a proud moment.
Congratulations. Well, that's wonderful. I think we're done, but thank you for this great narrative. I think that I was having feelings like, oh, this is not going to be very good, and I thought it was actually pretty interesting and a very
lead with that.
a very good
Thanks
discussion.
for your faith.
So thank you all very much for being here.